Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA, is a process to develop, review, and analyze documents, reports, and programs that enhance environmental quality through development control components. It is carried out during the project planning and implementation stage for prescribed activities. The aim of EIA is to achieve greater efficiency, effectiveness, and responsiveness in development in line with national needs and commitments for sustainable development. The purpose of environmental impact assessment is to provide the appropriate information and assurance to the relevant approving authority so that it can decide whether or not to approve a project. EIA also gives the project proponent the necessary information to ensure that the project's design and operation adhere to environmental sustainability goals. In addition, EIA assures the public and other stakeholders that the benefit of the project to society outweigh its environmental cost. The importance of EIA in environmental conditions lies in its ability to identify potential environmental impacts yearly. EIA carefully examines how a proposed project may affect the physical, biological, and human environment, including air, water, soil, biodiversity, and local communities. By identifying these impacts before construction begins, EIA helps prevent irreversible environmental damage. It also promotes sustainable development, ensures compliance with environmental regulations, enhances decision making, and creates environmental awareness among the public. Environmental impact assessments plays an important role in land law and planning control in Malaysia by integrating environmental protection into development approval process under the Environmental Quality Act 1974. Large land development projects are required to obtain EIA approval before they can proceed, as demonstrated in the Bakun Dam project, which required EIA compliance prior to development. EIA also clarifies federal and state jurisdiction over land and environmental matters, as illustrated in the case of Ketua Pengarah Jabatan Alam Sekitar and Ano V. Kajing Tubek and Ors, where federal EIA regulations were applied in Sarawak. In addition, EIA protects public interests by ensuring access to environmental information and supports transparency, public scrutiny, and accountability in planning decisions, as seen in cases involving Sahabat Alam Malaysia and Pembangunan Pertanian Selangor Sendirian Berhad di Kerajaan Negeri Selangor.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Izamuddin Memang Nasri. So today I will explain the legal framework governing environmental impact assessment, or EIA, in Malaysia. So the main law is the Environmental Quality Act 1974, also known as Act 127. This act aims to prevent pollution and control activity that may harm the environment. Under this act, the government has the authority to regulate projects and ensure environmental protection. One important provision is Section 34A, which make EIA mandatory for certain projects before they can begin. So for the case study first is Bakun Hydroelectric Dam 1997. This case involved the Bakun Hydroelectric Dam project in Sarawak, which affect local people living in the project area. They argue that they were not given access to EIA reports.
The Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA, is a legally required process under the Environmental Quality Act 1974, Section 34A, to assess potential environmental impacts of development projects. First, during the screening stage, the Department of Environment determines whether a project falls under the script activities and requires an EIA. Next, during scoping stage, identifies key environmental impacts such as land, water, air quality, biodiversity, and socio-economic effects, as well as the study area and project alternatives. Finally, the EIA reports evaluates predicted impacts, proposes mitigation and monitoring measures, including the no project options. the institutional and administrative authorities responsible for environmental governance in Malaysia. The Minister sets national environmental objective and ensure that development activities comply with the environmental sustainability principle. This role is important because it ensures that environmental considerations are integrated into national development planning and land use decision making. Under the Environmental Quality Act 1974, the Minister is empowered to enact subsidiary legislation, describe activities that require environmental impact assessment, oversee enforcement actions, and impose stop work orders and penalties for environmental violation. The Department of Environment, which is the main regulatory and enforcement agency under the Environmental Quality Act 1974, the DOE is responsible for receiving and evaluating EIA reports, ensuring compliance with Section 34A, and issuing approvals or rejection for prescribed activities. In addition, the DOE provides technical guidelines and environmental assessment frameworks and expert evaluations to ensure that environmental decisions are based on scientific and technical evidence. The Environmental Quality Council, or EQC, is an advisory body established under the Environmental Quality Act 1974 to provide expert guidance to the Minister of Environment. The EQC advises on environmental policies, reviews proposed regulations, and provides recommendations on environmental matters. Although the EQC has no enforcement powers, it plays a strategic role in long-term environmental planning, strengthening regulatory frameworks, and promoting sustainable development practices.
4.0 Key Environmental Issue assessed in EIA. This section discusses the key environmental issues assessed under the Environmental Impact Assessments, or EIA. In Malaysia, EIA is a legal process required under Section 34A of the Environmental Quality Act 1974, particularly for prescribed development activities involving land and infrastructure projects. The purpose of these assessments is to identify potential environmental risks at an early planning stage so that its suitable mitigation measures can be incorporated before development approval is granted. 4.1 Impact on land and soil resources. The first key environmental issue assessed in the EIA is the impact on land and soil resources. Development activities such as land clearing, excavation, and earthworks can be significantly alter natural landform condition. If not properly managed, these activities may lead to soil erosion, sedimentation, and slope instability, especially in areas within steep terrain. Slope modification and heavy machinery can also weaken soil structure and increase the risk of landslides. Therefore, assessment of land and soil impacts is important to ensure site safety, long-term land stability, and to prevent environmental damage beyond the development site. 4.2 Water quality and drainage impact. Another major focus of the EIA is the impact of development on water quality and drainage system. Development may alter natural drainage patterns and increase surface runoff, which can contribute to localized flooding. Construction activities may also result in sedimentation and pollution of nearby rivers, lakes, or drainage channels. These impacts may affect downstream water users and surrounding ecosystem if not properly controlled. As such, the EIA process required assessment of water quality and drainage impact to protect water resources and ensure proper drainage management. 3. Air and noise pollution. Air and noise pollution are commonly assessed environmental issues, particularly during the construction phase of development. Dust generated from site clearing and earthworks may affect local air quality, while machinery and vehicles contribute to exhaust emission. Construction noise can also disturb nearby communities, especially in residential or other sensitive areas. If prolonged or poorly managed, these impacts may affect the health, comfort, and quality of life of surrounding residents. Therefore, the EIA identifies these potential impacts and proposes mitigation measures to ensure compliance with environmental standard. 4.4 Ecological and biodiversity impacts. Lastly, the EIA also assess ecological and biodiversity impacts, particularly when development is proposed near environmentally sensitive area. Land clearing may result in the loss of natural habitats and disturb existing flora and fauna within the site area. Development activities can also disturb wildlife movement and fragment ecosystem, which may affect overall ecological balance. If these impacts are not properly addressed, they may lead to long-term and irreversible environmental damage. Hence, biodiversity assessment is an essential part of the EIA process to minimize ecological impacts before project approval.
So for the case study first is Bakun Hydroelectric Dam 1997. This case involved the Bakun Hydroelectric Dam project in Sarawak, which affect local people living in the project area. They argue that they were not given access to EIA reports. So for the second case study is about pembangunan Tanian Selangor 2011, which is this case involved a large-scale agricultural and land development project in Selangor. The project required an EIA because it was listed under the prescribed activities. The main issue was whether the state government could approve or decide on the project without confirmed EIA approval. The court explained that even though land matters were under state authority, EIA approval is still required for projects with environmental impacts. So the decision confirmed that the state approval cannot ignore federal EIA requirements. Okay, so for the last case study is about Sahabat Alam Malaysia 2023 to 2024, which is this case involved Sahabat Alam Malaysia together with local fishermen and communities challenging development approval given by the Department of Environment. They argue that the EIA process did not properly involve the public and that the EIA report were not clearly shared. So the local people claim to the project that would harm their income and environment. The court examined whether the Department of Environment follow the correct EIA procedure. This case highlights the importance of public involvement and clear decision making in EIA approval.